Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. Turkey says Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir is still a burning issue, and the unilateral steps taken by the New Delhi have complicated the problem. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan raised the Kashmir and Palestine issues during his address to the United Nations General Assembly. Erdogan called for the resolution of the decades-old dispute in accordance with the aspirations of the people of Kashmir. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has appreciated President Erdogan for raising his voice for Kashmiris. Turkey and Greece have agreed to resume talks over their maritime claims in the eastern Mediterranean after a 4-year hiatus. Without giving a date, the Greek Foreign Ministry said the 61st round of exploratory talks in Istanbul will resume in the near future. Dialogue between the two countries broke off in 2016 after 60 rounds. In India, nearly 1,100 people have died and more than 83,000 tested positive with COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. The country's death toll has climbed to over 90,000, with over 5.6 million people infected by the new coronavirus. In Pakistan, 8 more people have lost their lives to the virus, with the death toll standing at 6,432. The virus has claimed around 968,000 lives worldwide, while almost 31.5 million have been infected. Saudi Arabia has announced it will gradually resume the Umrah pilgrimage from October after a 7-month pause due to the coronavirus. Saudi state media says the locals will be able to undertake the pilgrimage from October 4th. It said pilgrims traveling from selected countries will be allowed from November 1st. News in detail coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. Turkey says Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir is still a burning issue, and the unilateral steps taken by New Delhi have complicated the problem. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan raised the Kashmir issue during his address to the United Nations General Assembly. Erdogan called for the resolution of the decades-old disputes in accordance with the aspirations of the Kashmiri people. President Erdogan said the Kashmir conflict is key to the stability and peace of South Asia. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has appreciated President Erdogan for raising his voice for Kashmiris. He said Turkey's unwavering support is a source of strength for the Kashmiris in their legitimate struggle for self-determination. U.S. Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad says the level of violence in Afghanistan is unacceptably high. In a briefing to the U.S. House of Representatives, Khalilzad said Washington expects further setbacks in the ongoing peace talks between the Taliban and the Afghan government in Doha. The U.S. envoy added the reduction in violence is possible. He said while Washington has reasons to be hopeful, it has no illusions about the challenges ahead. Kabul government and the Taliban are engaged in the talks aimed at ending the decades-long war in Afghanistan, but the country has been witnessing a spike in violence in the recent days. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Defense says it is conducting prudent planning to withdraw all soldiers from Afghanistan by May 2021. At a congressional hearing on Washington's Afghanistan's policy, Assistant Secretary of Defense David Halvey said complete withdrawal is conditioned with the implementation of U.S.-Taliban agreement. He said since the signing of the Doha agreement, no U.S. military personnel have been killed in Afghanistan. Halvey said Defense Secretary Mark Esper has not yet ordered the reduction of troops below 4,000 to 5,000 level. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on 5 Venezuelan lawmakers for supporting President Nicolas Maduro and his planned legislative elections. In a statement, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said the blacklisted individuals were trying to manipulate the December parliamentary polls in Venezuela. He said the U.S. remains committed to holding the Maduro regime and its supporters accountable for their corruption. Mnuchin said the decision freezes any U.S. assets of those blacklisted and bars Americans from dealing with them. The United States and dozens of other countries have recognized opposition leader Juan Guaido as Venezuela's legitimate president. The United States is committed to preserving Israel's qualitative military edge in the Middle East. U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper said preserving Israel's military edge is the cornerstone of U.S.-Israel defense relations. Speaking at the Pentagon before a meeting with Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz, Mark Esper said United States administration and Department of Defense are committed to upholding the long-standing priority of maintaining Israel's military supremacy. These remarks came after Israel expressed concerns over a possible sale of a U.S. F-35 fighter jet to the United Arab Emirates. Israel is currently the only operator of F-35 aircraft in the Middle East region. Turkey and Greece have agreed to resume talks over their contested maritime claims in the eastern Mediterranean after 4 years' hiatus. Without giving a date, the Greek Foreign Ministry said the 61st round of exploratory talks in Istanbul will resume in the near future.
Dialogue between the two countries broke off in 2016 after 60 rounds, leading to recent flaring tensions. Turkish Cyprus President Mustafa Akinci has termed the development as extremely positive and gratifying. Earlier, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan held a video conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel and European Council President Charles Michel. During the meeting, Erdogan called for a regional conference to gather all sides involved in the dispute, including the Turkish Cypriots. Erdogan also held a phone call with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron and assured Ankara is ready to solve all problems on the table.
Now moving on, Russian and Belarusian armed forces continue exercises near the border of Poland. In its defense statement, Russian Defense Ministry said the exercises are being conducted as part of the Slavic Brotherhood. It said the joint military drills are due to run until the 25th of September. The ministry said the drill involves around 900 personnel and 100 military hardware from the Russian side. Belarus Defense Ministry said the drills are for counter-terrorism purposes and are not directed against other countries. The exercises are happening amid mass protests in Belarus following contested August 9th presidential elections. Now, an European Union summit scheduled for Thursday and Friday has been postponed after European Council President Charles Michel goes into self-isolation. In a tweet, his spokesperson said Michel went into quarantine after one of his security staff tested positive for COVID-19. The official said the summit of EU leaders has been pushed back to October. He added Michel, who chairs the EU summit, tested negative for COVID-19 on Monday and is now following quarantine rules in Belgium. Economic sanctions on Belarus and response to Eastern Mediterranean tensions were on the summit's agenda. Moving on, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has reiterated his country's support for a political settlement in Libya. In his address to the UN General Assembly, Sisi said Egypt is ready to help Libyans free their country of terrorist organizations. Sisi said Egypt is committed to putting an end to the interference of some regional parties that deliberately transported foreign fighters to Libya. He said it's regrettable that the international community continues to turn a blind eye to the state that provides support to terrorists in Libya. Sisi said the ramifications of the crisis are not only confined to Libya but also spill over to affect security in neighboring countries. The president said the Cairo Declaration serves as a joint comprehensive political initiative to end the conflict in Libya. Meanwhile, hundreds of protesters took to the streets in Douala, the southwestern city of Cameroon, calling for an end to President Paul Biya's near 40-year rule. Police used tear gas and water cannons to disperse protesters in the commercial hubbing of the coastal city. The protest was called by Biya's rival Maurice Kamto of Cameroon Renaissance Movement Party. Biya won a 2018 election that his closest rival, Kamto, said was fraudulent. Kamto was jailed for 9 months in 2019 on insurrection charges following a protest. He was later pardoned, but his arrest galvanized the opposition and has led to sporadic protests ever since. Now, at least 6 people have been killed in a massacre in a rural area in Buenos Aires municipality in the western Colombia. Authorities say 4 others were also wounded in the attack. Officials blamed a resurgent organized group operating in a region for the attack. The victims were reportedly meeting in a chicken coop when alleged members of the J. Martinez column of former FARC guerrillas attacked the building. The Colombian army said troops arrived in the area to provide security. Local media said the region has been a hotspot in the armed conflict that continues to plague the South American country. Meanwhile, angry protesters have set fire to the Guerrero State Congress in southern Mexico. The violence has appeared in Mexico as the 6th anniversary of a massacre of 43 student teachers approaches. Some 500 union members and students broke into the state legislature and set fire to the chamber and the library. They also torched 5 cars. Some riot police were also injured in the clashes. Protesters also set fire to the Guerrero State headquarters of the ruling Institutional Revolutionary Party. The kidnapping of the young man in 2014 remains one of the most infamous incidents during the 13 years of Mexico's drug war. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, in India, 1,100 people have died and more than 83,000 tested positive with COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. The country's death toll has climbed to over 90,000 with over 5.6 million people infected by the coronavirus. In the United States, the death toll from coronavirus has surpassed 200,000 as the number of infections approaches 7 million. The virus has claimed around 968,000 lives worldwide, while almost 31.5 million have been infected. Meanwhile, Pakistan has recorded 8 deaths from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. The Health Ministry says 532 people tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry says the death toll has risen to 6,432, with the number of confirmed cases exceeding 307,000. It said nearly 294,000 people have recovered from the disease so far. The ministry said the number of active cases stands at 7,070. It said 107 patients across the country are on ventilators. Pakistan has launched phase 3 clinical trials for a COVID-19 vaccine being manufactured by a Chinese company, CanSino Bio. Pakistan's Federal Minister for Planning, Development, Reforms and Special Initiatives, Asad Umar, made the announcement on Twitter. He said a total of 40,000 people will be participating in the trial in 7 countries, of which 8 to 10,000 will be from Pakistan. He added initial results of the trials are expected in 4 to 6 months. The country's death toll stands at 6,424, with confirmed cases crossing the 306,000 mark. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has announced it will gradually resume the Umrah pilgrimage from October after a 7-month pause due to the coronavirus. Saudi state media says the locals will be able to undertake the pilgrimage from October 4th. It said in the first stage, 6,000 citizens and residents within the kingdom will be allowed. The media said pilgrims traveling from selected countries will be allowed from November 1st. It said pilgrims traveling from specific countries will be allowed from November 1st. Visitors from outside the kingdom will be permitted after Umrah's capacity will be raised to 20,000 pilgrims per day. Moving on, Russian President Vladimir Putin has called for strengthening the World Health Organization to coordinate the global response to COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, President Vladimir Putin proposed holding a virtual conference for countries interested in the joint development of vaccines. He said all capacities of the global pharmaceutical industry are needed to be employed to provide free access to vaccination for all states. Putin said Russia is ready to share its experience and to supply other countries with its Sputnik 5 vaccine. He also said Russia is offering to provide free of charge vaccine for the staff of the UN and its officers. Russia was the first country to grant regulatory approval for a novel coronavirus vaccine. Now, the Sangay volcano has paralyzed Ecuador with several strong explosions and ash emissions. Geophysical Institute of Ecuador said the country's active Sangay volcano registered a significant uptick in volcanic activity. President Lenin Moreno has alerted authorities to the ashfall of the Sangay in Guayas, Los Rios, Santa Elena and Bolivar. So the government has deployed emergency teams to assist citizens, farmers and ranchers. 6 provinces were affected by large explosions and subsequent ashfall from Sangay volcano. Sangay is one of the most active volcanoes in Ecuador, but this amount of ash was never recorded before. Now, in Taiwan, conservationists are collecting rare plant species before they are lost to climate change and human encroachment. The environmentalists say they want to ensure Taiwan's biodiversity is protected and can be reintroduced. Details in this report.
Taiwan has a heavy populated, sometimes polluted, western coastal plain. About 70% of the island is covered in a dense mountainous forest, home to deer, wild boar, and a highly threatened population of bears. The government has made environmental protection and shifting to renewable energy a key priority. The plant hunters are scouring subtropical Taiwan from the rugged eastern coast.
I started collecting plants when I was still at school. I didn't used to think it was that important, but since I began working at the conservation center, I have realized that many living things that used to be there are no longer there. So for many living things, if you don't conserve them properly, then perhaps in the future you'll no longer be able to find them.
The group members have to clamber up a steep cliff and face other difficulties in the rainy climate of the country to gather plants.
Not everyone can go to the places I go to. I can stay a long time out in the wild, in the mountains or forests. I go in scattered directions. I am very good at climbing trees. Not everyone can climb trees.
Scientists have signed a petition calling for immediate action to address the climate emergency. They have demanded the same amount of attention and resources to counter climate change as had been pledged for the coronavirus pandemic.
Now, Egyptian archaeologists have discovered 2,500-year-old stone coffins at the ancient necropolis of Saqqara. Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities said 27 coffins were found at the ancient burial ground that is also home to one of the world's oldest pyramids. In a statement, the ministry said the coffins are ornately painted and covered in hieroglyphs. Saqqara is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In March, Egypt reopened the Djoser's Step Pyramid, the first pyramid ever built after a 14-year restoration costing nearly $6.6 million. Now, defying odds, a courageous woman is cutting men's hair in Iraq's southern city of Babylon. Ignoring daily insults, she has remained determined, and now she has her own group of regular customers. More details of the bravery of the women in this report.
Zainab is the first woman to make a living by cutting men's hair in Iraq's Babylon city. She has suffered abuse when she started walking to work at the men's barbershop. She has kept on her journey, ignoring the catcalls, and has built up her own group of regular customers. She has set an example of achievement in a patriarchal world. The mother of 2 young daughters also does tattoos and offers skincare regimes.
I'm part of society. I'm like any other woman. I went out to work to support my family. When I sit with my girlfriends, I tell them you should not just sit at home. Go out, work. A woman is equal to a man. And right now, work opportunities are very limited. So I wanted to help my family.
The salon's owner, Sadiq Wala, says some locals complained about Zainab working there, but he ignored them.
There's no difference between a man and a woman hairdresser. A woman does a beautiful job. A lot of friends are coming here. Before I had a male barber, but to be honest, going to a woman is a change of mood, and we are better cared for.
Zainab's customers say they are satisfied with her work. Zainab's daughter is very proud of her mother and also wants to become a hairdresser when she grows up.
Now in business stories, stocks in Asia Pacific are trading mixed as investors react to recent comments from the Federal Reserve Chairman Jeremy Powell. Australia's ASX 200 jumped over 2.5% to lead the gains. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 and the Topix index shed fractionally. Mainland Chinese stocks saw marginal gains with the Shenzhen component and Shanghai composite edging up. Hong Kong's Hang Seng index has also slipped. Meanwhile, South Korea's Kospi edged up fractionally. Overall, the MSCI Asia ex-Japan index advanced just above the flat line. Now let's have a look at the weather updates. Well, that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Take care.